Good afternoon, students. So, today we will start with this chapter's next subtopic, that is mutations. So, what is a mutation? You have often heard this term while we discuss genetics. Now, mutation is a change that occurs in our DNA sequence either due to mistakes when the DNA is copied or as a result of environmental factors like UV light and cigarette smoke, etc. You know, the term mutation was introduced by Hugo de Vries in 1901 for the marked inheritable variation appearing suddenly in the plant named evening primrose, that is Oenothera limaciana. He made mutation the basis of his theory of organic evolution called mutation theory. So, mutation is a rare, random, discontinuous inheritable variation in the amount or the structure of the genetic material, that is DNA in the genotype of an organism. Now, mutations they take place both in the germ cells as well as the somatic cells. Those mutations which occur in the germ cells are known as germinal mutations, whereas the mutations occurring in the somatic cells are known as somatic mutations. Mutations range in size, they can affect anywhere from a single DNA building block, that is a base pair, to a large segment of a chromosome that includes multiple genes. Now, here you can see on your screens in the diagram displayed here that you see this is the original copy, and during RNA, this replication of the DNA, instead of the correct copy being formed, a mutant copy is formed. This leads to the, here you can see it, I have enlarged it, you can see it here. Now, this mutant copy is not having the same base pair as in the correct copy. So, this will lead to a different expression, right? Now, there are two main types of mutations. Is this thing clear? Now, as we talk about the type of mutations, one is the chromosomal mutation or aberrations, and the other is the gene mutations. First, we will take up the chromosomal mutation. So, chromosomal mutation or aberration is a mutation that changes the structure of an individual chromosome, leading to imbalance involving only a part of chromosome. And this can be duplication, deletion, translocation. So, I'll tell you how now. Let's explain it with the help of this diagram. Here you see on your screens 4 pictures are displayed, that is deletions, translocation, duplication and inversion. We'll take these one by one, and what do you understand by this? Here you see in the first one, deletion. Now, in deletion you see that deletion means something which is missing now, deleted. So, here if we have named the genes on the chromosome as A, B, C, D, E, F like this, so you see here that when a segment of the chromosome is lost, that is, for example, here C, D, E and F is missing. So, this means there is a deletion. So, we say that a segment of a chromosome lacking a centromere separates and is lost. That is what is known as deletion. Deletion may be terminal or intercalary. That means in between, interstitial. The affected chromosome loses certain genes. Obviously, if a segment is lost and those genes like this C, D, E and F in this case, they are lost. So obviously it will also become shorter in size than the normal chromosome. That is why we match the karyotype. So deletion is noticeable, right? Because it will reduce the length of the arm of the chromosome. So a segment of a longer chromosome remains unpaired in the terminal deletion and forms a loop in the intercalary deletion. Now example is like Cry-Duchat syndrome. This results by deletion of half of short arm of the chromosome number 5 in humans. In this case, the cry of an infant having this resembles the sound of a cat in pain. That is why the name Cry-Duchat syndrome. Right? Now the next diagram on your screens is that of translocation. Now you see that a segment from chromosome is transferred to the other one, that is translocation. This means a segment of a chromosome breaks off and joins a non-homologous chromosome. That means from one chromosome it is cut and it is attached to some other chromosome, that is a non-homologous chromosome. You can see this non-homologous chromosome on your screens by a different color, blue color, and here the numbering is also different. One chromosome is numbered ABCD and the other non-homolog on which it is being shifted is numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So both the affected chromosomes get modified here, right? The donor suffers deletion and becomes shorter than normal. The recipient has an extra set of genes and becomes longer than normal chromosome. So translocation means that both the chromosomes are affected. In one there is deletion of the segment and in the other there is addition of a segment. So translocation may be simple or reciprocal. So simple translocation result in the simple transfer of one segment to the other, and in reciprocal translocation two non-homologous chromosomes mutually exchange the segments, and the affected chromosomes, they retain their original size but they have rearranged the gene blocks. This is in the reciprocal translocation. Obviously, when both the chromosomes will receive a segment of each other, the size will not be so much affected as the type of the genes which are present, the sequence of the DNA is affected. You know, one example of this is chronic myeloid leukemia, that is CML, and this is caused by chromosome 22 of malignant cells shortened through translocation of a segment of its long arm. Next is the duplication. Now in duplication, you see here, I hope you are understanding. A segment from one chromosome is transferred to its homologous chromosome, giving it a duplicate of some of the genes. That is duplication, as the name suggests. Right? So this means that in this duplication is the occurrence of a chromosome segment more than once. That means it is duplicated. In the diagram you can see A, B, C, D, E genes are there, which are being cut from the one of the homologue and transferred to the next one, and again the same genes of this chromosome are repeated A, B, C, D, E, F. In the first part of this sister chromatid, only F is left, whereas rest are shifted. So one is reduced in size and the other is increased in its size. Now this duplication, it may be in tandem sequence or it can be in the reverse order. So it occurs in two ways. Homologous chromosomes may at time exchange unequal segments during crossing over. So one chromosome suffers deletion and its other homologue acquires an additional set, as shown in the diagram on your screens. Sometimes a fragment of a chromosome separates and joins a homologous chromosome. During synapsis between a duplicated and a normal chromosome, the former forms a loop at the site of duplication. So, what is the result of this morphological chromosomal aberrations? There is change in the sequence. So, this what you saw now is the inversion. Last diagram, a segment of a chromosome arm is inverted, that is, you can see the sequence is being inverted. A, B, C, D, E, F is the right sequence, but when it breaks off it is inverted, and when it is joins to the other chromosome, you see after AB it is F, E, D and then C. That is, the sequence is also upside down, it is inverted. That is why the name inversion. So in inversion, a segment of a chromosome separates and rejoins it in an inverted position. Inversions may also be terminal or intercanally, anything, right? So if the inverted segment includes the centromere in it or is paracentric, if the inverted segment is on one side of the centromere. So it can be either paracentric or paracentric, depending upon the reason or the fact whether centromere is included or it is not included. Now these deletions and inversions, they produce new locations for genes and they may change the phenotypic expressions. They may make the affected chromosomes unable to pair in the meiosis also, because pairing is on the basis of homologues, and it can also cause sterility. Now these chromosome mutations, they result in changes in the number of genes or in new positions for the genes on the chromosomes. Now these altered base sequences of DNA and then the genetic message transmitted to the mRNA is different. So these changes, if they are not lethal, that is, if they are not affecting the life of the individual, they can cause profound changes in the phenotypic expressions. You know, inversions and translocations interfere in synapses and they reduce the chances of crossing over, that is, reshuffling of the genes. Here we'll just go through it again hurriedly with a little bit of the definition in a very short form. So these different 4 types of chromosomal mutations, you can see here: deletion, that is the loss of part of chromosome; duplication means an extra copy. So whenever there is deletion in one part, there is going to be a duplication on the other chromosome, right? Then inversion, which reverses the direction of the chromosome the sequence changes here. ABC, CBA becomes, that is inversion, and translocation, that is part of one attaches to the other chromosome. Here you can see this again in the diagrams in a very simplified manner. Original chromosome is having A, B, C, D, E, F. In deletion, you see here B is removed. The sequence becomes A, C, D, E, F. In duplication, you see twice B is included. A, B, B. That means another B is added. Duplication. Then inversions. In inversion, you see the sequence has changed. Instead of A, B, C, it becomes A, C, B. And translocation, you see here after B, another segment from somewhere else is being added here, that is A, B, G, H, and then C. So these additions or deletions, whatever it is, obviously it is going to affect the phenotypic expression. How? Because when it is going to make the RNAs, the messenger RNA is going to carry a different message, and this will make a a separate type of protein, and that protein is going to end up having another expression. So obviously the phenotypic expression will change, and that is the result of the mutation. So that is all about the chromosomal mutations. Now we come down to the gene mutations. These changes, whichever are occurring, whether it occurs in a chromosome or it occurs in a gene, they are permanent changes. So if we talk about gene mutation, a gene mutation is a permanent alteration in the DNA sequence that makes up a gene, such that the sequence differs from what is found in most of the people. Right? So mutation is an altered expression. It is a changed expression. The gene mutations can be of replacement of one base pair for another, that is substitution, or it can be removal of one or more bases or nucleotides from the DNA sequence, that is deletion, or it can be addition of one or more bases or the nucleotides in the DNA sequence, which means it can be insertion. So gene mutation can be of these types. Now here you see what happens. This is the original sequence of the base pairs. We are going to study in the next chapter how these bases they form the triplet codon. So this means 3 base pairs, they will give one sign, and if this sequence changes of the 3, there is going to be an altered expression. So here you see base substitution. Here original one is having T, A, A, C, T, G, and in the base substitution it is T, A, that is thymine, adenine, adenine, then cytosine C, again cytosine is repeated, and then guanine G. Right? So if this happens with an additional C base pair, this is, gene mutation can be of a single nucleotide base. A single one base, is changed. So here another C is being added, and here you see the frame is going to shift. So this is a frame shift. Right? So if this C is, now you see here deletion, T, A, and then C, and after that this C, second C is removed, or this T is removed. So one thing is missing now here, this T is being missed here. So again there's going to be a frame shift, but in both the pictures you see the frame is being shifted in the opposite direction. In the upper one it is being shifted towards the right side, and in the lower one it is being shifted towards this left side. That means we are going to take 3 base pairs. So this 3 3 codon, triplet codon, that is the three bases which make one codon, is going to be different. We'll study this in detail, and I think then at that time you will be able to understand it in a more lucid manner. I'll take this up separately. So up till here it's clear to you how these mutations occur, right? Now you know these mutations, they can be spontaneous because they occur randomly and their frequency is obviously low. So they may arise by errors in the process of replication and from failure to repair damaged DNA properly. You know, many cell products like formaldehyde, peroxides, they act as mutagens also. Background radiations from the sun and radioactive minerals in rocks, they are also mutagenic. So certain genes, they mutate much more frequently than others. So genes which have the more tendency to mutate are known as mutable genes. Some genes termed mutators or mutator genes, they increase the mutation rate. And there are some other genes also which are known as suppressor genes. Now these suppressor genes, they decrease or reduce the rate of mutations. Now this is if the mutations, they are occurring naturally, but mutations can be induced also, and we can induce them for experimental purposes in the laboratories. So how can we induce the mutations? We can induce mutations by the biological mutagens, physical mutagens, or chemical mutagens. So if we talk about biological mutagens, these viruses, they cause mutations in the host cells. So they can induce mutations. In the physical mutagens are mostly the radiations and the temperature. Right? So in the radiations, you know, there are high energy radiations like X-rays, gamma rays, alpha, beta rays, cosmic rays, UV light. So they have been found to be mutagenic in almost all the organisms, and they produce mutations by altering the DNA. You know, one of the world known example of induced mutation is the example of the Second World War. Atom bombs were dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, and it caused many induced mutations in Japanese people. That is a live example. This is why there is an increasing public concern all over the world about the human activities which add to the background levels of the environmental radiations. Because radiations can cause different kinds of cancer. Then temperature. Rise in temperature increases the rate of mutations. You know, high temperature denatures the DNA by breaking the hydrogen bonds between the two strands of DNA, and this will affect its replication as well as transcription. Then we come down to the chemicals which act as mutagens. These include nitrous acid, formaldehyde, peroxides, mustard gas, then acridines, 5-bromouracil, etc. some more chemicals. Colchicine induces polyploidy by inhibiting the formation of spindle in the cell division, and this property of colchicine is used to duplicate the chromosome number also. Caffeine, certain constituents of tobacco, and an increasing number of drugs, food preservatives, pesticides are mutagenic in nature. Mutations, they are inherited when their causative genes are copied during DNA replication and passed to the cell's descendants. So, mutation in a somatic cell can cause the changes in the hereditary characteristics of the cell and may cause damage, including cancer, to the body parts formed of the descendants of that particular cell. So, mutagen in a germ cell destined to form the eggs or spermatozoa can cause the damage to the next generation. So, if the damage is to the germ cell, in the initial part of this lecture, I told you that it can be either in the mutation, can either be in the somatic cell or in the germ cell. So, if it is present in the somatic cell, it will cause damage to an individual cells which are the descendants of that particular cell, right? It becomes cancerous. But if a mutation has occurred in the germ cell, then it will not be visible in the organism. It will be visible in the next generation when it forms or fuses as to form the zygote and the next generation offspring. Mutations, they have some importance also. That is for adaptation to the changing environment. Mutations, they are the raw material for organic evolution. They are very useful in agriculture. We can make new varieties, new crops with the help of mutations. It is helpful in the animal husbandry because mutations can increase the yield of milk, eggs, meat, wool in the animals. Then in industry, the mutant strains of the microorganisms with better fermenting power or better yield of the antibiotics, or in the research work, they are useful in understanding the basic principles of inheritance and cell metabolism. So, there are many useful aspects also of these mutations. Now, after this, we come down to the next subtopic, that is the pedigree analysis. Now, what do we understand by this term pedigree and the analysis of the pedigree? So, the pedigree analysis describes the process of interpretation of information displayed as a family tree. The family tree or pedigree is constructed using a standardized set of symbols and will include information about the disease status of each individual. Is something clear? Okay. So, the pedigree analysis is a kind of genetic analysis in which a trait is traced through several generations of a family to determine how the trait is inherited. Now, pedigree analysis can be done for different living organisms. What we are going to talk about is the human inheritance. Now, in humans, there are certain problems in the study of inheritance. Why? Because human traits are often not controlled by a single pair of genes, as is the case of tallness and dwarfness in peas. Humans have a mixed ancestry and few traits are pure. So it is almost impossible to trace one trait through a family. Each marriage combines the entirely different genetic characters of two families in the children. Then a person can observe only 3 or 4 human generations in his lifetime. For more generations are necessary to demonstrate the principles which govern human inheritance. And the generation time is also very long, that is mostly 20 years or so. And the individual progenies are comparatively small. We need large number of progeny to make some comparison. Environment has an influence on human traits. Then chromosome number is 46. Humans cannot be subjected to conditions of genetic experiments. Right? So these are some of the difficulties when we want some family records of humans. Now, while studying the pedigrees or making the analysis, there are certain symbols which are used in analysis. Now here you see a square represents a male, a circle represents a female, and a line drawn between these two represents mating. Then in the next diagram is the parents with children. Upper row is of parent and the lower one is of children, and in the order of birth from left to right. This next one shows the zygotic twins, right? So they are formed from 2 zygotes, and then next one shows the monozygotic twins which are formed from 1 zygote. In the next one you see the number of children, and the number represented in it is the number of children, like 4 males, 3 females. Then darkened part shows the affected individual, that is here the black part shows the affected female or the affected male. Then half colored part shows the heterozygote for this autosomal recessive trait, and a dot in the center shows the carrier of sex linked recessive for the female, and a diagonal line on the square shows deceased child, and this triangle shows spontaneous abortion. 2 lines between the male and the female sign shows contiguous marriage, that is marriage between relatives, closely related, that is, and last one is representing the sex unknown of the child. If we do not know how many male and how many female children are there, but we know the number of children, so we can draw this and write the number in it, like 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. So this means it's not known whether they are male or female, but this is the that they have a child, the progeny. Then we come down to the types of pedigree analysis. The tools employed in pedigree analysis are the principle of probability and chances of difference in realized ratio based on the smallness of the progeny, and secondly, elimination of alternatives. So when we use these tools, we can categorize it as autosomal dominant trait, autosomal recessive trait, sex-linked dominant trait, sex-linked recessive trait, and Y-linked trait. When we say sex-linked dominant trait, we talk mostly about the X-linked. So here we'll take these four one by one. Here you see in the dominant autosomal dominant. Autosomal means in the somatic cells, dominant means that it is sufficient to express in a single dose. You know, a human is having two sets of chromosomes, it is diploid. So even if on one chromosome a particular trait is present, it is able to show or express itself in the next generation. So if it is autosomal, it does not matter whether it goes to the son or the daughter. Here you see that in this one, this autosomal dominant one, you see it cannot be recessive as two affected parents could not have an unaffected offspring. So parents must be heterozygous. From here we deduce, you see both the parents here shown in the diagram are affected. But in progeny, only the son, one child is affected and the other is not affected. This means if this is a dominant trait, then parents have to be heterozygous. Only then they can produce this unaffected offspring. If the parents were homozygous, or even if one of the parents were homozygous, then this would not have been the result. So the presence of this unaffected offspring shows that the parents are having heterozygous in this particular trait. Then next is the autosomal recessive. Here you see the unaffected parents, but one of the child is affected. So this means that it cannot be dominant as two unaffected parents could not have an affected offspring. So parents must be heterozygous. But the difference between these two is that in the first case it is dominant character and in the second one it is the recessive one. Both are autosomal, right? But in the case of dominant one, only gene on one of the chromosome is required to express itself. Whereas in the recessive one, even if the parents are unaffected, that means they are heterozygous for it. So in heterozygous state, you know the recessive character is not expressed, but it is being expressed in the offspring. So this means that the parents, they are heterozygous for this character. It became homozygous in one of the child, one of the offspring, so it is expressing this. So this means that this child would not have been produced if the parents were not heterozygous. Clear? Now the next, that is the X-linked dominant and the X-linked recessive characters. Now this is the, in this case 100% incidence of affected daughters from an affected father suggests X-linked dominance. What do you see in this? You know the top one is the parent. Female affected, male unaffected. They have one son who is affected and they have a daughter who is unaffected. Now, sorry, they don't have a daughter, marries to a woman who is unaffected, and their children, out of these children, all the daughters are affected. So this means that the affected mother was homozygous for this character, but passed it on to the son, and in son there is only one X chromosome, that is from the mother. So the character expresses itself in single dose. When he marries a woman who is unaffected, produces daughters with the who are all affected. All affected means that it is a dominant trait it can be expressed in single dose, and it is a zigzag inheritance, female to male, male to the female. So sex linked inheritance is also inherited in a zigzag pattern, that is from female to the male, and then that is mother to son, and from son again to the daughters. This is also known as zigzag inheritance. And in this case, X-linked recessive case, you see here, that was in the previous one which we discussed is the dominant trait. It is inherited in single dose. So here you see mother is unaffected, father is affected. In this next example, they produce a affected daughter, right? To produce an affected daughter, it means that that this daughter marries an unaffected man and then produces these 6 children, of whom all the males they are affected, right? So from here now you will understand the difference. If this male had an affected X chromosome, passed it on to the daughter, this daughter again passed it on to the sons, right? So from father to daughter, daughter to the sons, again zigzag pattern of inheritance. Now why we call it as the recessive inheritance? Because all sons are affected. These parents in the first generation, they have a daughter who is affected. Had this daughter been heterozygous for this trait, then she would have produced 50% affected and 50% unaffected sons. But because she got the other X chromosome from her mother, which was also having the affected trait, that is why all sons they are affected, because whichever X chromosome went to the son is affected, but mother is not affected. This means mother is heterozygous for the trait, but as the trait is recessive, it is not expressed. Is that clear? And again here you see in the daughters it is not expressed because they are again heterozygous for that trait, and here the father is unaffected. In the dominant case, it needs only single representation, whereas on the chromosome, whereas in the recessive one, it needs on both the chromosomes. Right? Clear? So these are these 4, and one thing more you remember about the dominant and the recessive ones, that in the dominant trait, the character is expressed almost in every generation. If you see 5 generations, 6 generations, it is represented almost in every generation, but whereas in the recessive traits, it can skip generations. Sometimes if it is in the recessive one, it does not become homozygous, it is being carried out as in the heterozygous state only, then it misses the generations and it is carried forward in the next generations without being expressed, and it can be expressed in the generation when it becomes homozygous. I hope I am clear to you. Any doubts you can ask. Now we will take 2 examples of this, one of the dominant and the other of the recessive trait. So we take the autosomal dominant trait, that is the myotonic dystrophy. In this, the genes for the autosomal dominant trait, they are located on the autosomes, right? They are expressed even when they are present in heterozygous condition. So in the case of myotonic dystrophy, the trait is present in mother due to the presence of the heterozygous, one dominant and one recessive gene. right? This trait can be passed on, right? This trait will be passed on to the progeny and will appear which is heterozygous. So here you can see in this diagram, this is autosomal. You see mother is having this heterozygous, mother is heterozygous for muscular dystrophy, whereas father is normal. Now the children here in the next generation, that is, they have this normal female, affected male, normal male, affected female. So you see here both the sexes, that is the male and the female, they are affected. So it is an autosomal inheritance, and obviously it is mother is heterozygous, that is why it is not expressed in 50% of the generation or the progeny. Now this unaffected male marries an unaffected female, so their children are also unaffected, 2 females and 1 male, whereas the affected female marries an unaffected male but results in having a daughter who is affected and male is not affected, right? So this is the inheritance of a dominant trait, and you see it is being expressed here in every generation, and it is not necessary that it is following a zigzag pattern, but it can be expressed equally both in the males as well as in the females. Now the next example we take is of sickle cell anemia. This is an autosomal recessive trait. Right here you see the parents from where we start this analysis, they are both unaffected. So the genes for autosomal recessive trait, they are located on the autosomes and they are expressed only when the offspring is homozygous recessive. You know, a recessive trait is always expressed in homozygous condition. Keep that in mind, Mendelian inheritance. So the heterozygous individuals, they are carriers of this disease, and homozygous dominants are normal, right? So the pedigree analysis, they explain both heterozygous as well as the homozygous conditions also. Like here you see parents are not affected, right? But in the progeny you see that first male is not affected, second male child is affected, then third female child is not affected, fourth female child is affected, and fifth male child is not affected. They have 5 children, out of which 2 are affected, 1 is male and 1 is female. So this clearly indicates that it is autosomal. Secondly, it is not expressing in all the children. Thirdly, it was not shown in the parents, but it has appeared in some of the children. This means that it is a recessive trait. Now this third female who does not show the trait marries another man who is not showing this trait, but again they have a son who has this, who is affected and has the trait, but 2 daughters, they are not affected. So this means both this daughter as well as the man whom she marries, they are heterozygous for this trait, that is for sickle cell anemia, and that is autosomal. That is why it comes in the one of the children in the homozygous state and it is expressed. Right? I hope you have understood. Anything which you have not understood, please tell me. I will repeat it for you. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.